Taiwan gets a first batch of Stinger missiles from the U.S. It's a welcome development after delays in other shipments. It's been 6 months since protests against China's COVID-0 policies erupted across the country. What, if anything, has changed?
Today, in the final episode of Where's the Matsu County Chief Taking Us? We're in an outlying island of an outlying island chain just off the coast of China.
Plus,
taking the Taipei Metro and need some help? I'll be testing out its new chatbot helpline.
Hello and welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. President Tsai Ing-wen has urged the EU to sign a two-way investment deal with Taiwan.
We hope to continue to widen the horizons for cooperation and negotiating a bilateral investment agreement, which would not only bring us closer economically, but also help ensure the security of Taiwan, Europe, and the world.
The president was speaking alongside EU trade officials on Thursday at the annual Europe Day dinner in Taipei. Tsai has pushed for a bilateral deal with Brussels for years. Business between the EU and Taiwan was worth around 70 billion US dollars last year. A number of European lawmakers have also pushed for an agreement, but senior EU officials say such a deal with Taiwan is unnecessary for trade to function between the two. The U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo has held, quote, candid and substantive talks with her Chinese counterpart in Washington. Raimondo met with China's Wang Wentao on Thursday. He's Beijing's first senior official to visit the U.S. capital since 2020. Their meeting comes after a series of disputes between the two superpowers over trade and national security. Japan has tightened sanctions on Russia to punish the country for invading Ukraine. It's part of an agreement by the world's leading industrial nations to make Russia pay a higher cost for the war. After the G7 summit last week, Japan now says it'll freeze the assets of more groups and people. That includes military labs, army officers, and a state TV journalist. Tokyo also condemned Russia's decision on Thursday to move nuclear weapons into neighboring Belarus. Japan was twice attacked with nuclear bombs by the U.S. at the end of World War II.
ご指摘のロシア、ベラルーシ両国の発表については承知しています。唯一の戦争被爆国である日本として、ロシアによる核兵器による威嚇も、ましてや使用も断じて受け入れることはできません。
South Korean and U.S. forces are holding their largest ever joint live-fire exercises to mark the 70th anniversary of the two countries' alliance. The drills are being held close to the border with North Korea. They involve 2,500 troops and hundreds of military vehicles and jets. Thursday was the first round of 5 drills, which are expected to last until mid-June. It comes as tensions on the Korean peninsula reach their highest point in years as Pyongyang continues to ramp up its missile testing program. A batch of anti-aircraft missiles arrived in Taiwan on Thursday. They're part of a new U.S. aid package worth $500 million US dollars. Sam Robbins looks at what this new shipment means for Taiwan's defense.
This is the FIM-92, or Stinger, a U.S.-made anti-aircraft missile. A shipment of them arrived in Taiwan from the U.S. yesterday. The weapons can be used in either surface-to-surface or surface-to-air combat and only require one person to operate. The U.S. Congress recently authorized around $1 billion US worth of military support for Taiwan. These newly arrived missiles are part of the first half of that package. The FM-92 has proven its worth in recent conflicts. Missiles provided by the U.S. have helped Ukrainian fighters shoot down Russian drones and helicopters, thwarting many low-level and precision attacks.
Ми, знаєте, як охотники, що чекають свою здобич, довго сидимо, чекаємо, бувають місяцями, але інколи це стається.
But Taiwan's situation is quite different from Ukraine's. Taiwan's military is preparing for a potential invasion from China, which claims Taiwan as part of its territory. As an island nation, defending against airstrikes would be crucial for the Taiwanese military in the event of an attack. Chinese warplanes frequently enter Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. That's why many believe the new delivery may be even more important for Taiwan than other countries.
Stinger is very, very effective against, for example, paratroopers coming in trying to take over an airbase or a port, and helicopters delivering special operation troops across the Taiwan Strait trying to capture a port or airfield.
The delivery comes as other orders of weapons or equipment have been delayed due to technical or supply chain issues. Taiwan is currently waiting on another shipment of 250 Stinger missiles it purchased from the US to arrive. Shipments of fighter jets have also been delayed. But despite these holdups, the newly arrived missile packages could provide Taiwan with a powerful new tool to help keep its skies safe. Klein Wang, Sam Hui, and Sam Robbins for TaiwanPlus.
After hitting Guam, Typhoon Mawar is moving northwest toward the Philippines and Taiwan. With speeds of up to 200 kilometers an hour, Mawar has been upgraded to a super typhoon. Taiwan's Central Weather Bureau says the typhoon could approach the country by Tuesday or Wednesday next week. The Bureau says the chances of Mawar making landfall are low, but torrential rains should be expected. For more on the damage of Typhoon Mawar to Guam, Bing Wang speaks to Chirag Bojwani, Chief of Staff to the territory's Vice Speaker.
Can you give us a layout of the typhoon on Guam?
About less than 24 hours before the storm, we realized that it's going to be a direct hit to Guam and that it was a super typhoon. Having lived through the past super typhoon Pongsonghua, I feel like this one was slightly worse because even though it was a really strong typhoon with winds of upwards of 150 miles an hour, the actual westward movement of it was 5 to 7 miles an hour. So by the time it came to Guam, it was here for a long time. The peak winds were at night, somewhere between like 2 o'clock in the afternoon all the way to past midnight. And so it was about almost 12 hours of destructive winds just going through the island.
And what's the atmosphere like right now?
Most of the island is still without power, still without water. Some parts of the island have been, had power and water restored, but it's going to be a couple of days, couple of weeks before the entire island is back to normal. But throughout the entire length, some parts have a couple lanes closed because there's just trees blocking the way. There's power lines on the ground. I know of a lot of people who are still unable to leave their homes because trees are just blocking their driveways. People have lost entire homes.
What has the government response been?
I think given how typhoons, unlike COVID, is something that we have a playbook for, it's something that we're regularly trained for. It's something that we know how to respond to, so that's a good sign. I think the government did the best we could. We did everything we needed, but as always with Mother Nature, there's no real way to predict on how bad it would have been.
Again, that was TaiwanPlus reporter Bing Wang speaking with Chirag Bojwani, Chief of Staff to the Vice Speaker of Guam. A group of activists stormed a meeting for the renewal of a power plant project in northern Taiwan. The project has courted controversy among local activists who say it could be highly damaging to the environment. Philip Rosard has the story.
What was meant to be a quiet environmental impact assessment quickly turned into a small demonstration. On Thursday, dozens of environmental activists barged into this private meeting between representatives of Taiwan's Environmental Protection Administration and energy group Taipower. The assessment had been arranged to discuss building a new liquefied natural gas terminal in northern Taiwan. The protesters loudly expressed their concerns to the attending officials. The power plant project aims to convert the oil-fired Xiehe power plant in Keelung into a gas-fired facility. But some see this as a threat to the local environment. That's because it requires reclaiming land from the sea. Activists say Taipower is providing the public with false information, as they say the energy firm did not conduct research within the reclamation area.
所以我觉得是恶意欺骗的社会大众。
生态资源最丰富的地方，在填海区，我们都做了密密麻麻的点。
The controversy has led to several changes to the project. These include shrinking the development area by more than 20% and moving the reclamation zone eastward. Taipower says it's working to avoid coral areas and be more eco-friendly. But these environmentalists remain unconvinced. And on Thursday, the meeting was forced to come to a halt and was rescheduled for another day. James Lin, Sandy Chi, and Philip Broussard for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, Taiwan completes work on a pipeline that's set to bring clean water to millions of Taipei residents. Stay tuned.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app and follow us on social media.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. All this week, we've been bringing you on a journey through Taiwan's outlying islands of Matsu. Today, Andrew Ryan brings us further afield in search of the elusive blue tears in the final installment of Where is Matsu's County Chief Taking Us?
As my time in Matsu draws to a close, I travel to the most remote islands in the chain, where decades of military and geographic isolation have preserved some of the most stunning sights in all of Taiwan. Like this rare sight, square waves, which you can only see in 2 other places in the world. And then there's the critically endangered Chinese crested tern. There are only 100 of them left on Earth. And in the island of Dongju, we get a solo performance from this striking beauty. This is the only lighthouse in all of Taiwan made from granite stones. And see that wall there? That's to block the wind. So imagine late at night, you're bringing fuel up to fuel the lighthouse, and you're carrying a little lantern. You don't have to worry about the flame blowing out. The isolation is great for visitors, but not so great for the people who live here.
早期在 7 还没有开的时候，我们这边只有杂货店的时代，我们买任何东西，我们的东西会比台湾贵1倍，所以我们很多的时候我们会习惯会从台湾叫生活用品过来，可是要等货船，早期是1个月一班，所以物资都要等。
The county chief suggests a trip to Daqiu. It's only a half square kilometer in size, and it's uninhabited. Uninhabited by people, that is.
大邱有梅花鹿，跟人跟梅花鹿之间的互动，让游客心里会觉得非常的舒适，而且这样子的互动在台湾少见。
Sika deer were once considered a source of income for the military. Now they're a protected species. They released 13 deer on this island 20 years ago, and today there are more than 200.
So the trick is when you're feeding them, you have to stand off to the side a little bit, otherwise you're going to get butted with their horns. They're very cute. They look quite aggressive, but actually I think they're just hungry. What's amazing about this is I've actually never seen sika deer in the wild like this before. I've only seen them at a zoo. So it's really cool that they found a way to bring back a wild population of them on this island here. there's one last thing to see in our trip to Matsu, an elusive phenomenon known as the blue tears. The bioluminescence comes from plankton, which gather here to feed in the spring. If you want to see it, you need just the right conditions. High tide, a southerly wind, a moon that's not too bright, and you'll need some waves, a boat, or something else to agitate the water. In the past, the locals thought the blue glow was a nuisance because it alerted the authorities to people smuggling on the high seas. But these days, the blue tears bring in a new source of income: tourism. Thousands of people flock here every year, hoping to see what the international media have called one of the natural wonders of the world. Some people even brave the cold seawater, soaking for hours just to get the perfect photo. And of course, while I'm there, I can't resist getting a photo of my own. But what if you want a less curated view of the blue tears? We decide to leave the crowds behind and take a boat into the darkness of the ocean.
It's almost like you're looking into outer space. You can see sparkling like stars, the Milky Way, this essence coming up from the waters. It's breathtaking. And it's one of those things that you have to come here in order to see it for yourself, otherwise you would never believe it.
It's not easy to see the sights of Matsu. In just 4 days, we took a plane, 7 boats, and plenty of car rides in between. But the trip is worth it. Isolated by the weather and the sea and years of military occupation, these islands are like nowhere else in Taiwan, or really nowhere else in the world. Alex Chen, Devin Tsai, Peachy Drong, and Andrew Ryan for TaiwanPlus.
You can watch all 5 episodes of Where is Matsu's County Chief Taking Us on TaiwanPlus's social media or website. Check it out. 6 months ago, China erupted in rare protests over seemingly never-ending COVID-19 lockdown measures. Harrell Hughes looks back at the build-up to the unrest.
Screams of fear, followed by chants of free them. This was the city of Shanghai on November 27, 2022. Protesters gathered in the streets as tensions over China's zero-COVID policy reached a tipping point. The movement began in October in Beijing when an unidentified man dropped a protest banner over a busy highway just days before the Communist Party's National Congress. We need food, not COVID tests. We want freedom, not lockdown. Don't be slaves, be citizens. The man was arrested and disappeared, but his message was seen around the world. Anti-lockdown sentiment was growing among the public. The tensions reached boiling point when 10 people died in a fire at an apartment building in the western region of Xinjiang. The building was locked down, and COVID restrictions also hampered rescue efforts. Within days, vigils for the victims escalated into anger against lockdowns and the man chiefly responsible for them, President Xi Jinping. There were solidarity protests all over the world. Seoul, New York, Toronto, Berlin, Sydney, Tokyo. The Chinese diaspora stood in solidarity with people protesting the CCP.
We don't have democracy, we don't have freedom. So it will take a lot of risk of us to let our voice to be heard, because the government only want their voice to be heard, only one voice for all of the country.
There were also shows of solidarity in Taiwan, despite the antagonism across the strait.
抗议本身就是一件生而为人的人权，所以不管这件事情发生在世界上的任何一个国家，我觉得我们都有权利站出来替那边的人民说话。
In China, dozens of people were detained during the protests. Others were quietly taken in by police after the demonstrations. Now, 6 months later, some have been released, but the fates of many of the others remain unknown.
The CCP is afraid of anybody who try to think independently, speak up their mind, and by cracking down on them, by imprisoning them, by harassing them, the CCP tries to muzzle their voice.
The rare protests prompted an even rarer outcome. China's government backed down. By December 7th, the years-long COVID lockdown measures abruptly ended. Authorities justified the about-face by declaring victory over the virus, but many were unconvinced, and also unimpressed when a wave of infections quickly engulfed the country, making the sacrifices of ordinary people during the pandemic essentially pointless. As for protesters and dissidents, most remain in prison 6 months after the unrest, their families still searching for answers. But the ripples from the rare protests in China will be felt for years to come. John Su and Harrell Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
To learn more about the aftermath of the A4 protest movement, Harrell Hughes spoke to Kevin Slayton, lead researcher of China Dissent Monitor for Freedom House.
Why are these protests significant?
So yeah, I think the significance of it is sort of the groundwork was laid over many months. And then of course, really notably is that it led to the government changing policy very, very quickly. When ultimately it became untenable, when too many people were protesting and it started even to branch off into a politicized movement or political demands with the white paper protests. So it's not only sort of a rebuke national government policies, it's a rebuke of the dictator. And I think that's significant in today's China, that people's movement was able to achieve such a win.
So what has changed in the last 6 months after these protests?
And I would say that protest in the past 6 months since the anti-lockdown movement has not suddenly stopped. It's just different. Some of it's ongoing. It looks like it did before the anti-lockdown protests, that Chinese people are taking these risks despite knowing the risks. To speak up for public interest issues, to speak up for their own rights on a regular basis. And I hope that more people try to learn about what they're saying.
That was Harrell Hughes speaking to Kevin Slayton, lead researcher of China Dissent Monitor for Freedom House. Taipei's Metro has released its first chatbot helpline. The trains are one of the most common ways for both locals and tourists to get around the city. The smart helpline is the first non-verbal way for riders to call for help, and Joyce Zeng tries it out.
The Taipei Metro is one of the most convenient ways to get around the city. Last month, almost 2 million trips were made each day on these trains. But what can you do if you need help? The city's Metro is expanding options available with its first chatbot helpline. It's hoping that riders will feel more comfortable speaking up, even if it is more discreetly through a virtual assistant. Previously, if you needed help, one option was to use one of these emergency intercoms. Press this red button and it'll patch you through to a train operator. There are also similar intercom systems on the platforms, but the new chatbot aims to help those who need immediate support but prefer not to verbally call for it. This could be useful to passengers who feel unsafe or are being harassed on board. Through the Metro's app, you can tell the bot which train carriage you're on and what's happening. Each conversation with the bot is flagged with a human operator in the control room who can step in to help as needed. Some other things you can flag to the chatbot are things like drink spilling, or if another person on board is feeling sick and needs help. You could even tell it if the cabin is feeling too hot or too cold, or ask more general questions like how much a ticket costs or how long it'll take from one station to another. For now, the chatbot is only offered in Chinese, and it can't quite give off-the-cuff answers to questions like, I'm going to X destination, which station should I get off? But if the tool proves useful, riders could see more features in the future. Howard Zhang and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
The completion of a water pipe in northern Taiwan means clean water is guaranteed for residents of Taipei. Once again, Harrell Hughes has more.
After 4 years of digging, drilling, and development, Taiwan's Fetsui water pipe is finally finished. Workers have spent over 1,500 days digging the tunnel, which now connects the Beishisi River to a water purification plant. The work is done in 12-hour shifts. It's been a tough job to complete.
如果没有戴口罩的话，真的没有在里面没有办法呼吸。每次出去都会头秃脸的，然后流汗的话，雨鞋都会装满。我们做过，里面的温度大概40到50度，人没有办法在里面工作。
Typhoons and heavy rainfall are frequent in Taiwan, and this can cause water that's sent to people's homes to sometimes be murky or discolored. The completion of this tunnel means that around 6 million homes in Taipei will now be guaranteed access to clean drinking water. Though it carries a price tag of over $65 million to complete, for many of the residents, the cost of clean water was priceless.
气候变迁这种不定期的灾害啊，它会变成就是说很频繁，雨量它会越来越大那有的时候呢降雨它会少但是呢一降雨就会造成大洪水等等所以这些都是要整个做一个评量的。我觉得这个能够稳定供应这个水质很好的这个饮用水这一项就是价值连城了。
The project did not come without problems. Workers had to excavate under nearby Jitan Mountain, which can be unstable. But its completion means that even in extreme weather, clean water will be available. Damon Lin and Harel Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
Central Taiwan's Sun Moon Lake has finally seen enough heavy rain to bring its water levels back up. Many have looked to Taiwan's so-called plum rain season for relief amid a historic drought. A recent weather front brought large amounts of rain to tourist hotspot Sun Moon Lake, which is also a reservoir. Its water levels have now reached 80% of capacity. The lake was only 20% full just last month. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally today, we leave you with images of ancient ground carvings known as Nazca lines and aqueducts in Peru. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.